does, where speakers motivate and inspire them and expose them to the diversity of options in the world. Today we have with us Neil Sahota, who's going to talk about AI is the disruptor and how to wield the tool building the 21st century. Neil is an IBM master inventor. He's the United Nations Artificial Intelligence Advisor, author of the book Own the AI Revolution, and professor at UC Irvine. Over his 20-plus year career, Neil has worked with enterprises on business and marketing strategies to create next-generation products or solutions powered by emerging technology, as well as helping organizations create the culture and ecosystem needed to achieve success, such as the United Nations Artificial Intelligence for Good initiative. Thank you so much for joining us, Neil, today, and we really look forward to getting an insights about the world and the future of artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Parveen. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity and good day to everybody. Excited to talk about AI as always. So let me share my screen and let's dive into it. And I'm not able to share my screen. Sorry, be patient with us for 1 second. There we go. All right. Well, I'm really excited to be able to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is artificial intelligence. It's very much I can't even call it the future anymore. It's very much the present as we build the 21st century. It's a foundational building block. So let me get the big thing out of the way for everybody. What is AI going to mean for us in the future? So I always hear the two different modes here. One is the Terminator future, where the machines are going to rise up, conquer the world, eradicate humanity. I don't believe in that. And right now, all AI is passive and only can do things that we teach it, doesn't learn on its own. But you have the other hopeful people that look at like the Star Wars movies and see helpful assistants like R2-D2 and 3CPO. And so I know while people are concerned about which way it's going to unfold, that power actually lies with us as people and society. And so all of you out there that are going to help shape that future are going to help make these decisions. So I'm going to try and do my part to help you guys help us by sharing a little bit about what AI is. So I know there's a lot of hype out there and it's quite a buzzword. Unfortunately, it's detracted away from some of the things that we can actually do. We call AI the third generation of computing with good reason. It's unleashed whole new sets of capabilities that we've never had before. That's actually the big struggle a lot of people have. You think about all those big corporations, all those really smart business leaders and technologists, they still have trouble wrapping their arms around because we're used to computers following like a software program or doing calculations. We can do so much more right now. And I want to give you a sample of this to kind of showcase what's possible. So one of my good friends, Ross Goodwin, started thinking, could we have an AI create? Could AI like create art? Can it imagine? And so he constructed an AI system called Benjamin and wanted to see, could Benjamin write an original film script? So I'm going to play you a little news clip showing what happened in Benjamin's attempt. So I preloaded it to save a little time, so let's watch.
All right, you can't tell me that.
Yeah, I was coming to that thing.
I don't want to be honest with you.
You don't have to be a doctor.
I'm not sure. I don't know what you're talking about. I just wanted to tell you that I was much better than he did. him. I didn't want to hurt him. Sorry, I don't like him. I don't love him.
So can an AI create? Can it create art? Well, we found out the answer is actually no. Now, Benjamin actually did a great job. This is his original film script, right? And it was Benjamin's first attempt, and his 100th film script will be a lot better because machines do learn fast. But the reason I say no is because when it comes to AI, it can only do what we teach it to do, which means it can only do what we can commoditize. How do you commoditize imagination? Well, we haven't figured that out yet. So how did Benjamin do this then? Well, my buddy Ross realized every movie ever made fits into one of 12 archetypes. Well, guess what? 12 archetypes, you can teach a machine. Benjamin a little bit about plot, a little bit about dialogue, characterization, and now you have an AI film script writer. And that's actually how Ross is actually able to do this. But we're talking about some things that we normally don't expect from machines. It didn't rehash old plots. It didn't just try mix and match things that were already done. It actually did write an original screenplay, but only because we found a way to teach Benjamin to do that. And that's the real power of AI. That's what separates it from the previous generation of computers. It's not a giant search engine that can feed us, answers we already know. AI has the ability to solve problems we don't have the answers to. That's where the magic lies. So what exactly is AI then? Well, it's a machine that's able to think like a human being can. It takes the knowledge it has, its experiences, a little bit of deductive reasoning, and is actually able to arrive at logical conclusions. And it does this by employing three key areas, three key facets. The first is this concept of machine learning. So we don't give it a path like we do a software program. We give it lots and lots of data. That's the fuel for AI. We also give it something that we call a ground truth. And that's the rules on how to make decisions, not the decisions themselves. So anytime you want your AI system to do something new, it's like a 3-year-old kid. So we give it the rules on how to make decisions, we give it tons of data to learn from, match some of those patterns together, and then we ask it questions. And then we have the human subject matter experts help it learn, right? These are the teachers. And so as it tries to do things, the human teachers come back, hey, that's right, good job. Or, well, that's wrong, this is the reason why. Or that's partially correct, you forgot about this, or this isn't quite right. And so it learns much like a human child would. But the thing is that machines learn much, much faster than we do. And so it goes from 3-year-old to PhD in just a few months. So one of the most complex topics that I've ever worked on was cancer research. And when I was, IBM Watson, learned very quickly. It became a master at cancer research in about 4 months, but it could have done it faster. The challenge was we didn't have enough subject matter expertise time available. These smart cancer researchers are busy saving lives, so you get like 12, 14 hours a week from them. That's ironically why it took so long. So that's a testament to the ability of machines able to learn. The second is understanding natural language. Think about how we talk. How much slang do you use? Jargon, idiom, right? I told people that, it's raining cats and dogs, right? Most people understand, okay, he's saying that it's raining really hard, right? But machines tend to take things literally. So it's going to interpret that as saying like, wait a second, raining cats and dogs, you mean small animals are falling from the sky? That doesn't really compute. But AI is smart enough to realize it's not literal definition that matters. It's contextual, right? convey meaning from the conversation, from body language, right? To understand some of these colloquialism. So that's a powerful thing because it's traditional machines, very hard to understand human beings, but AI, they look at the context, the grammar, the syntax, even the body language to understand what we're trying to say. And the third piece, well, they have the ability to interact like they're a human being. Think about that for a second. Like if I want to buy a bicycle, I'm going to go to Google, type in buy bicycle, get 50 bazillion web pages. I'm going to search through them, learn some more keywords, try them, get more information. Maybe I'll visit some online bicycle stores, some such discussion groups. Maybe I'll go to Instagram, see what people are posting. I'm going to go through a lot of effort to try and synthesize this data to make an informed decision. With AI, though, if it's trained on bicycles, I can just go to the system and say, I want to buy a bike. Which one should I get? You know what the AI is going to come back and tell me? Well, why do you want a bike? That's actually a pretty good question. I want to get back in shape. Okay, great. How often do you think you'll ride your bike? 4 or 5 times a week, probably an hour at a time. And where will you ride the bike? I just around my neighborhood. Great, here's the right bike for you. So it's like a best friend that happens to know about bikes, kind of accelerating this process to find the best fit bike, right? Much easier than searching through a bunch of web pages and other information to make a decision. But I use best friend intentionally because while it's asking questions to learn more to make an informed decision, it's also taking things it might know about me like a friend would. Right? It might be looking like, well, I know he doesn't like to spend a lot of money on things, so he doesn't want an expensive bike, so I'm going to push those aside. He says 4 or 5 times a week, but he's a pretty busy guy, so it'll be like once or twice a week, And so it's taking things like a friend would know to help make that personalized decision. So machine learning, understanding natural language, and interacting like it's a person, these are the 3 key features for AI. So what are we doing with that? A lot. I can tell you there is not a sector or industry today that's not using AI in some capacity. We always hear about healthcare and financial services and marketing, education, but even trying to get a job, talent management, HR, they're using AI. Sports, it's all over the place, even in cricket. Right? There's not a space out there now that somebody is not using AI. And this is why I say AI is not really the future, it's really the present. And to be perfectly honest, if an organization is not using AI, they're about 3 years behind the curve. That's why they're looking for a lot of people with fresh ideas and some basic knowledge to help them get over this hump. So what can we actually do with this, right? Well, I'm a big believer in trying to find innovation. A lot of people think about automation, do something faster, cheaper, or less errors. But the real value of AI comes through innovation. And so I want you to watch this video. It's embedded in the slide. There's not much audio. Don't worry about that. And it's a bit short. But watch what this gentleman is doing and watch what happens to that robotic arm. Maybe you may have noticed that he's somehow able to control that arm with his mind. Well, if you're familiar with Elon Musk, he's got another startup company called Neuralink, where they want to put chips into people's brains, use AI to decode your brain waves, so you can do something like this. Well, that's not what's happening here, actually. Trying to decode our brain waves is incredibly difficult. There's so much variability. But here's where, even though we have the really smart technologists, we need the domain expertise. We need the smart doctors and physicians and biologists to help us unlock the value here. And so these groups working together realized while a person that is born without a limb or loses a limb can still send signals to their phantom stump, right? You don't have to try and decode the brain waves. That signal triggers a process in our body. And one of the part of that process is the muscle and tendon motion, which is a lot easier to decode. So if you look above his right elbow, you'll see a little black band. That's an IoT sensor array. And it's there to pick up those minute movements of muscles and tendons. The AI has learned how to decode what those motions mean and translate that into an action. So if this gentleman thinks about wanting to do a thumbs up, right, the series of muscle and tendon motions associated with that the AI picks up on and then moves the robotic hand to make that thumbs up. So we've actually now figured out a way to restore mobility to people that have lost a limb. This is the power we're starting to tap in with through AI. So what's your superpower then, right? Hopefully you're thinking like, well, some pretty good stuff here, impactful in the world, helping people. Well, there's a challenge when it comes to AI, unfortunately, right? Old guys like myself tend to be used to certain ways of doing things. And, we've learned some bad habits from working from all these companies. I just hate to say it that way, but it's the truth. But all of you don't have those drawbacks, right? You actually come in looking at the world with a fresh eye. I've helped over 30,000 organizations, including big ones like the United Nations, figure out how to use AI, but they all have the same kind of problems. They're not used to the capabilities. They're used to the second generation of computing. It's hard for them to step away from what they know. So what's really happening? The most innovative, most disruptive ideas are coming from young people. They're coming from young entrepreneurs. That's the superpower we all bring to bear. Because when it comes to automation, we're only unlocking 20 to 30% of the value from AI. The people that can do innovation, they're unlocking the full potential. Because they're not thinking about how to make something incrementally better. They're thinking about how I can change the process or the system to find a new way to do the work. They're the ones that are really exploiting the real capabilities of artificial intelligence. And some of the things that they're doing, well, there's a project called AI, and I'm pretty sure it's not what you think. So it's actually a research project out of Nairobi, Kenya. And they're out to tackle the biggest illness in the world, which is actually loneliness. Before the pandemic started, about 40% of the world suffered from loneliness, moderate to severe. I'm sure it's way worse today. And so they went out and said, could we use AI to create a safe space for people? Not a substitute for human relationships, but a safe space so that if someone was feeling lonely or depressed, stressed, anxious, they're an outlet, someone that would be empathetic and listen and help them build the confidence to reach out to other people. And so they went out to try and teach AI unconditional love. Now, what does that mean, unconditional love? Well, it's kind of a subjective type of thing, right? And what's the difference between unconditional love and like regular love? And how many forms of regular love are there? I mean, you got the love between two parents, between parent and child, between friends, right? And so as they've gone down this path, they've realized this isn't just about teaching the AI, because to do that, we have to commoditize the training. It's become a deep exploration into what it means to be human, right? How do I define love? What do these things mean? And this is why I actually believe that AI is going to actually help us as people be more human. It's creating more retrospection, introspection, the need for balanced lives. So it's an interesting project going on. They made good strides, but we made even bigger strides in being more human as a result. And then TikTok. I don't know how many of you guys are using TikTok or Instagram, but a lot of these social media platforms use AI to a whole new level. Ever wonder how TikTok knows what content to serve you? Why certain videos pop up on your feed that maybe people don't even know? They're using AI, right? AI is not just analyzing what's in the video, but they're analyzing your behavioral patterns. They're doing what we call a psychographic profile. So they actually have the ability to analyze you across the 56 personality traits and use that to help matchmake what videos to actually serve you, because they're looking for maximum resonance. And then one of my favorites, because I'm a big proponent of social good and part of my work with the United Nations, ocean health. So Ocean Alliance actually created something called SnotBot. And that's the picture you actually see. SnotBot is a drone augmented with artificial intelligence. And so what it does is it follows whale ponds. And when a whale blows its nose, the drone swoops in, it's got petri dishes on the top, collects the whale mucus. And then the AI analyzes the mucus. It looks at the water, the crustaceans, the algae, the bacteria, all these different pieces, and looks at all the different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle and snaps them together to get a perspective on the local ocean health. Now, I asked Ocean Alliance that if they try to do this without technology, how would this work? And they're like, well, to be perfectly honest, we're not sure we could do it without the technology. At the very least, we'd have to rent a boat, staff it with 12 to 14 people, go out, collect all these various samples, do the analysis and stuff, and hope to try and put the jigsaw pieces, puzzles together. Now, just going out collecting the data, they said, would take about 7 days, which is equivalent to what SnotBot does in about 1 day. Plus, SnotBot's actually doing the analysis on top of that. So there's a lot of efficiencies for them. But suddenly we have a way to actually localize ocean health and get a quick snapshot, something that we could not just do as regular people on our own. So the question really becomes then, like, what's the one, right? Which one? There's so many things that we can do with AI, right? That's what we're trying to unlock right now. While there's been a lot of work been done already, the current AI wave is almost 10 years old, we've barely scratched the surface. And that's why we really look to you guys to help figure out what can we do? Because again, you got that superpower. You're not tied down to the old ways of thinking. How can we unleash some of this potential to create more value, to help people, to start new ventures, to take humanity to that next level? Now, one of the things that a lot of people find surprising is who's really the leader in AI. A lot of people say, well, it's like the US, right? Unfortunately, it's not. China is actually probably the leader right now. They've invested a lot of money. They've actually built a whole city called Future Scientific City in Hangzhou, China, that has an AI town, a blockchain town, stuff like that. But they're incubating thousands of startup companies in AI, and 10% of them are actually started by foreigners. They're cranking out tons of data scientists, machine learning folks. They really have invested in the ecosystem. What have they been able to accomplish with that? I'm going to play you another news clip, show you what they've been able to do with AI in healthcare.
At Shenzhen No. 6 People's Hospital, Dr. Cheng Chunsheng is conducting a gastroscopy for a patient. During the procedure, dozens of images are being taken of the esophagus to look for cancer. Esophageal cancer is one of the deadliest cancers in China. Usually, the accuracy of the diagnosis relies on the doctor's personal experience and skill. This is where an AI system becomes quite helpful.
For example, we have 50 images. The AI system will analyze them all and select 5 pictures showing a high possibility of cancer. Then I check the selected images directly to make a final diagnosis. It's faster and more efficient.
The system is called Miying, developed by Chinese internet giant Tencent. Its database comes from cancer diagnosis information from first-class hospitals in China. Since its trial use began in June 2017, it has served 400,000 patients.
We
established a joint program with Tencent to provide necessary data. Now the accuracy of early detection of esophageal cancer has reached 90%, roughly the same level of diagnosis made by human doctors.
This is one of the first hospitals in China to put such an intelligent system under pilot trial for clinical testing. Last November, China announced its plan to build a national platform for AI diagnostic medical imaging. Developers say they are trying to enlarge the system's database and expand its coverage in China.
AI is able to learn from lots of data. That's what humans can't do. We hope the system can reach out to remote areas and grassroots hospitals in China, where patients can get a diagnosis as accurate as in first-class hospitals in big cities. So far, the system has been used for detection of esophageal and lung cancer, as well as diabetes. It's expected to cover the 10 deadliest cancers in China in the future. He Weiwei, CGTN, Shenzhen.
So you can see what they're actually able to do. And you see that data is the fuel, and China has a huge advantage, and they have the data and the government shares it. But one of the key takeaways here is they're not trying to make the best hospitals even better. They're trying to take the hospitals in underserved areas, in rural areas, and advance them to the state of the best hospitals. So United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 3, good health. And this is one of the things that they're actually able to tap into. This is one of the reasons why China is so far advanced. They have some infrastructural internal benefits they can leverage some countries don't have access to with the data. But again, this is the power we can tap into. I mean, could you imagine if everyone suddenly had access to the best healthcare possible, what that would do for society? All part of the potential with AI. Another area that people don't think about is law, right? We always think about this as a white collar job, as we say in the United States. It's a lot of people knowledge, people power. There's a lot of subjectivity, but there's a lot of work on AI. It's actually exploded in the last 2.5 years. Now there's a lot of focus on legal operations, e-discovery, contracts, but there's a company called Legal Nation out of Los Angeles, started by 3 lawyers, 0 technical knowledge. What they've done is they've built an AI associate lawyer. So a lawyer that has like 3 to 6 years of experience, they're working for a law firm, someone files a complaint. So basically someone files suit against your client. And so they have to go through, read the complaint, understand what's going on, respond back, generate deposition questions, start formulating case strategy. For an associate lawyer with about 4 or 5 years of experience, on average, it takes about 10 to 12 hours to do that. Legal Nation's AI does it in 2 minutes, right? Even something that people thought was require a lot of subjective and soft type of skills, we've seen that AI is actually able to do this. Now, you may have noticed something funny about my slide here. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, there's a chicken. Well, I have that there for good reason, because one of Legal Nation's biggest clients is Walmart. And Walmart actually had a suit against them where a guy, ironically was a dentist, bought a whole chicken, bit into the gizzard, and chipped their tooth on a stone. Normally, Walmart would just settle the case out of court to avoid the hassle. I don't know what they would pay, maybe 70, 80,000 US dollars, right? But now because they're using Legal Nation's AI, the case actually got processed through the AI. And one of the things the AI did as part of its case strategy formulation was come back and say, it's actually a material fact that when chickens eat, they eat stones. They get stored in the gizzard. So by this customer buying a whole chicken and actually eating the gizzard, they should have been aware of the risk of a stone in there. That argument won Walmart the case. They didn't have to pay the guy, saved lots of money that way. But I was curious. And so I started asking some of the very big international law firms, would your lawyers have ever been able to identify that? And the consensus was only if that lawyer was a chicken farmer. So the AI was never trained about chickens or farming or anything like this. It was actually able to piece together this information as part of its research and its experience in handling other cases and applying that knowledge in a specific situation. Again, here's the capabilities that we're actually able to tap into. Now, I know what you're thinking. First of all, don't get me wrong. While machines are good at a lot of things, better than people are, and it's a little bit surprising, there are lots of things that people are better at than machines. Creativity, imagination, just to name two. But the other thing is, to use AI, you don't have to be a technical person. You don't have to be a wizard at machine learning or data science or architecture or even programming. Right? You gotta be cautious. When people think about AI, I think it's like all this coding that's going on. It's not. There's actually very little coding that goes on. It's really about the data. Think about the problem we want to try and tackle. Do you have enough data to teach the machine? Is that data good? Is it clean? Is it robust? And that's about experimenting. That's where the domain knowledge is so important. These are the key components successfully using the technology. So you got to think about the problem. Do you have the data? And then you have the subject matter experts to teach the AI system, right? And this last one, the training, is something that people really underestimate. Again, machines don't learn on their own. They don't know anything we don't teach them. So you can't just assume somehow it's going to know. You got to invest the people time into teaching the machine. The other key thing we want to watch for is bias, right? Machines learn from us. And so if there's a flaw in our training and our data, the machine's not going to know that, right? It's going to learn that bad habit. What's worse, you think about implicit bias. That's a bigger problem because it's things we don't see. For example, the United Nations is very big about trying to get AI judges. They want like AI robot judges. And we've been working on it for a couple of years. There's tons of data to do that. But you look at my home country, the United States, look at the court data. The problem is you're going to start seeing things like, well, people committing the same crime and convicted of the same crime and seem to get different sentences, right? And so the AI is going to start wondering, like, why? What's different about these people? And it's going to find that it's similar crime, similar age, similar occupation, but it's going to start learning some things like what these are different ethnicities. So maybe some ethnicities get lighter sentences and some get harsher sentences. Well, that's not right. That's not what we want to teach the machine. So as a result, these implicit biases, we don't actively look out for them and try and correct them. The machines will learn the same habits that we have. So AI, it's not going to be perfect, and it never will be, right? It can do some things, like I said, better than we can, but we can't expect to be perfect because we're the ones still teaching it. And that's why there's a huge focus on about ethics when it comes to AI. A good chunk of my work with the United Nations also revolves around ethics and what we call responsible AI. So we'll play you just one last video, a short one, to help you understand what does that term mean.
What is responsible AI? Imagine you're driving down the freeway. There's a slowdown up ahead, so you slow down. But what about after it clears up? Will you stay at a slow speed just in case at some point traffic slows down again? Of course not. You'll drive fast again, knowing that if you need to use the brakes, you will. Those brakes do for your car what responsible AI does for your business. It lets companies implement AI at scale with confidence. Knowing responsible AI can help avoid problems up ahead or even course correct, all by making transparent, trustworthy decisions. Companies using AI to help identify and recruit candidates run the risk of perpetuating inherent biases in the data, drawing on practices that might have skewed to one group or another in the past. But responsible AI can help them recruit and consider a broader pool of qualified candidates. We hope this was a fair representation of responsible AI.
So responsible AI is a little bit more than ethics. It's trying to find right and proper use for the technology as well. Just because we have the ability to do something doesn't mean we should do it. So you look throughout recent history, Google developed a hate speech detector using AI. Noble goal. Turned out, though, that the detector was racist. Amazon created an AI recruiter. Fortunately, it turned out to be sexist. These companies mean to do that? No, not at all. This is where implicit bias comes to play. There are things we just don't realize as people that we have to actually actively look for. So we have to learn how to think differently, right? They'll look for these challenges, these implicit biases, but also that real machines look at the world differently than we do. A real simple example is autonomous vehicles. Think about how you drive, right? How do people drive cars? We do with our eyes, right? Very vision oriented. So the first autonomous vehicles relied on camera data. Because we drive with our eyes, we assume that machines have to rely on camera data, right? Their eyes. That seemed to work out pretty well until one day there was a gentleman in his Tesla. He had an autopilot because he was busy watching a Harry Potter movie. I'm not kidding. He was watching a Harry Potter movie. So he never saw this truck wiped out on the highway, and he didn't realize the truck bed was, blocking the road. So even though you could see it from 500 meters away, the Tesla actually never stopped. And because this guy was busy watching Harry Potter, never saw it, the Tesla ran right through the truck bed, ripped the top of the car off. Everyone's like, how could this have happened? Well, it was a cloudy day, and you have like a grayish white truck bed. It blended into the background. The cameras could not detect it, right? Never saw it. And that's when people realize, oh my God, if this had like just radar, this never would have happened. Guess what? AI can read radar. It can read LiDAR. It can use GPS. It can use IoT sensors in the car, in the road, in other cars, and landmarks to get information. In fact, it can even use sound to drive. It's a well-established.
You got muted, I think, by error. Give me a second. I'm trying to unmute you. Yes, you're back.
All right. I was just saying, it's a well-established fact that you can hear a little kid about to run across the street before you see the little kid. And so today, the autonomous vehicles are processing 1,000 data points a second in real time, right? The question we debate in the United Nations isn't when do we legalize autonomous vehicles anymore. It's about when we ban human drivers, because we as people now create the most variability in the system. There's 20 million people a year worldwide that unfortunately die or suffer permanent horrific injury. And it's been estimated that that number will reduce by 90%, at least 90%, with autonomous vehicles. That's 18 million lives a year saved. So I'm not trying to discount our place in the world, but we all know that we're a little bit distracted sometimes when we're driving, if it's just thinking about what's for dinner. Likewise, we think about machines and AI thinking differently, think about cooking. We do have hot chefs. You see one right here from Japan, but we've actually done things. I've actually worked on a project where we taught AI to create original food recipes. Now you think about how do you do that? You give it a bunch of cookbooks, kind of stuff. No, I mean, machines can't taste, right? They don't know flavor. And you can't just ask it to create a recipe, we cook it, try it, give it feedback, it's not efficient. So is there a better way to cook? Well, there actually is, right? While we experiment as humans to learn things with cooking, for machines, cooking is really just chemistry. So we learned that if we teach the AI about chemistry and the chemical combinations that create flavors and nutrients and aromas and appearance, they can cook, they can create original recipes. Things like the chocolate Austrian burrito or the Vietnamese apple kebab. In fact, we've seen AI come up with ingredient combinations that no human has thought of in 50,000 years of history. The stuff is good, it's delicious, right? I asked for a healthy barbecue sauce once, and of course the AI came back and said, what do you mean by healthy? So I said low calorie, high fiber. And it came up with this bizarre barbecue sauce of cheerman and butternut squash and stuff, but we made it. Was healthy, was delicious, did taste like barbecue sauce. So when we think about the capabilities of AI, it's not just the technical capabilities, but realizing that they can process different forms of data that we can't, that they can do things differently than we can. And the synergy between the two is where we unlock a lot of the real value. So with that, that's what we're trying to really move towards, is this partnership between humans and machines. It's not supplanting people, and we're not trying to put people out of work. We're trying to free people up for, the future of work and do more complex, more value-add things. But it's this concept of augmented intelligence, right? That what we can do as people, we can augment our capabilities, our abilities to advance through artificial intelligence. With that, I thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope it was helpful. And I think we can open it up for questions now.
Thank you so much. That was such an insightful session. I think probably one session is not enough for such a vast topic. We have a lot of questions. I think, Hannah, you wanted to go first? I think she's not ready. I'll take the question. Yeah, there she is. Go ahead.
My question was whether AI is capable of human emotions.
That's an interesting question. So the answer is no. They don't feel the emotions like we do, but we've actually seen they can understand human emotions. So by watching people's body language, the inflection of their voice, even the word choice, they can perceive in real time how a person is feeling. So if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're frustrated, if you're angry, and if your emotions change, they can detect that and actually change how they respond and interact with you. It's a field of artificial intelligence we actually call artificial empathy. So they don't feel the emotions, but they understand what it means for people and are able to detect that.
Thank you so much for that. Aditya?
What are the education specializations required to have a career in AI?
It depends which field in AI you want to go to, because there's a lot. Just foundationally, if you want to be on the technical side, you have to understand a bit about data science and about like data analytics, but you really also have to understand whatever domain you're working in. So what's the meaningful data, and how do you construct that ground truth, those rules for decision making?
Okay.
Thank you. Janak?
Hi, thanks for the great session. I just had a question on the impact on jobs. Now, I know it says it creates more high level jobs, but how do you upskill? And say like a country like India, where if we take farming for example, which employs so many people, we bring into automation to farming. How do people how do we create jobs? Take the Indian example, and how if we get to a high level AI economy, how would we create jobs?
So that's an interesting question because there's actually a lot of use of AI in agriculture today. And I've actually worked on things where we're allowing farmers with limited resources to improve crop yields with less water usage, less topsoil consumption. But that also means that each person can grow more food, so you may not need as many farmers. And what we were finding out is that throughout human history, as we made various technological advancements, we've seen that some of these jobs go away or they require more skills, more education. The problem is the change is happening faster and faster. We have a smaller runway to make some of these things happen. And so one of the big things we're actually seeing right now is like in agriculture is we need people to help teach the machines about agriculture. So it doesn't mean that people now have to understand programming or anything like that, but they have to be able to teach. Their tools to help the machine learn. But not everyone, just because you do something well doesn't mean you know how to teach it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges we're actually finding out right now is how do we help people make kind of that transition to an educator around their expertise. And then the machine's never going to do 100% of everything. And new things or things a lot of variability machines are not good at. You pass off the low level kind of admin or grunt work to the machine to free up people to do the more complex things. So if you start thinking about how do you maximize my land space and the different type of crops and the rotations, that's where more of that time is going to be spent by farmers.
Okay, but what is your take on the impact on jobs?
It's going to be huge. I mean, I won't sugarcoat it. We actually published a report saying that a child, a 5-year-old today, by the time they turn 18, 40% of the jobs that exist today won't be there.
Okay.
Right? Those jobs are gonna morph into something else, and everyone's wondering, well, what are they going to morph into? Right? What's that future of work? That's the thing is everyone's waiting for someone to tell them what the future of work is. We actually have the opportunity to find that ourselves.
Okay.
Mark Twain said that the best way to best way to predict the future is to create it. That's what I see the best innovators, disruptors doing right now. There's a law school in the United States where they realized what lawyers are going to do 6 years from now is going to be totally different. And rather than wait for someone to figure it out, they're like, we're just going to create that ourselves. We're going to define what lawyers will do in 6 years and start teaching them today.
Thank you. We have a next question which says, with your number of years of experience in AI, what is it that you have seen in your career that you have found really interesting?
There's lots of things. I worked on a project where they were trying to figure out how to improve training and matchmaking for seeing eye dogs. So there's a lot of nonprofits that do that, and their success rate is about 30%. There's a lot of information on dog psychology. And so we actually use AI to look at puppies as young as 7 years old, and based on behavioral science and psychology, figure out which ones will make the best seeing eye dogs, and then create a customized training program for the dog to train them. And then we do a psychographic profile on the dog's personality with the pool of people waiting for a dog to do the matchmaking. And so, again, this is a lot of like the psychology and the fuzzy stuff, but we've seen that 30% success rate move up to 81% as a result. And so when we talk about kind of where the exciting part is, it's kind of that the psychology, the psychographics, the neurolinguistics that right now is really amazing. It's really blowing people's minds.
Wow. In fact, somebody when saw your session on social media, sent me a message about ethical AI, where a car's driving, it's through AI and it is going to hit, but it is the choice whether to save the grandmother or the child. Uh, and what are your views on ethical AI?
It's a tough thing to solve because it's on us as people, right? It's fine when we're in the moment and we have to make a quick snap decision, right? But now we're talking about having to teach machines, and so we have to make these decisions in advance. And we have to make tough decisions like which life is more important, the grandmother or the child. And that is uneasy for a lot of us to do. And that's unfortunately the shield of, well, we deal with it when it happens is being taken away from us. So, and I get that a lot of things are debated, but I actually gave a talk in front of the world regulators. There's a big conference called GSR, and I was the guy willing to say what everyone has in the back of their mind but doesn't want to talk about. How do you define ethics? How do you define morality, right? It's a very subjective, personal thing. We each have our own code of morals and ethics, right? And it's different for each of us. Forget about city or county or states or countries. How do you even resolve that? And I said that if you want to come up with like ethical AI, you have to create a baseline of morality. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of discussion. But if we're not willing to talk about it, we're not going to go anywhere. And I'll be honest with you guys, that was not well received by the global regulators. They were angry at me. They're like, oh my God, why is he saying this? He's throwing the hand grenade out there in front of everybody. And I finished my speech, no one applauded, right? The UN Secretary General even ran up afterwards. He's like, Neil, what you said was very brave and it was very right, but I don't think you made any friends. You should really get out of here. A year later, they invited me back. I was there, but guess what I saw? I saw in the hallways, some of these guys were having conversations about that very thing with each other. So this path of ethics, it's tough. It's going to be tough, but it's something we have to figure out. We have to figure out this kind of baseline. And honestly, all of you guys listening to us right now, you're going to be the drivers of this. You guys, I think, have the most invested, not just because your place in the world, but you're the future leaders, and you're going to be the decider of some of these things. And I think you guys have the power to actually tap into this and help us define what this is going to mean. And I hope you really take that mantle up because we need it.
Thank you. We have one last question, Neil, which is there is so much about breach of privacy, given that AI is being used to access private data. Do you see a conflict between AI advancement and reduced privacy?
I won't call it an AI thing, right? AI needs data, and definitely there's stuff that we may not realize we're giving up that's being fed into that. And camera data, the average person on Earth is captured on camera at least 6,000 times a day, whether we know it or not. There's a big concern around that. But I will also say that I think privacy essentially is also dead. I actually wrote an article in Forbes titled that Privacy is Dead, Nobody Cares, because subconsciously, I think a lot of us realize what data is being collected on us, and we tend to be okay with it as long as nothing bad happens. And I think a perfect example of this is, I don't know if anyone's familiar with a documentary called The Social Dilemma. It was started by a guy called Tristan, who used to work for I think it was Google or Facebook. And he talked about exactly what these guys are doing, not even using AI, but what they're using to try and get people's data. And to obviously to monetize it. And a lot of people saw the documentary and they were shocked. They're like, oh, I had no idea. But then I'd ask them the question, did you delete your social media account? Nope. Well, I get a lot of out of it, and it helps me stay in touch with people, and I like to post these pictures. And I think that's the real thing, is that I think this concept of privacy is eventually going to go away. I hate to say it that way, but it's dying off. And I'm not saying that's right. And I know a lot of people don't understand what data are given up, but that's going to become the ultimate trade-off. And as things with AI and IoT and even VR, where data is the fuel for these things, this is going to accelerate, right? You have a smartphone, you're coughing up data every second. So again, this is where the ethics come in, and what's acceptable. These are the tough questions we have to fight, because it's like, should people be forced to share their data? Most people say no, but one of the biggest inhibitors in the advancement of healthcare is we don't have the data for people to actually even do the research. So there's okay in healthcare, but not okay over here. These are tough questions we got to solve.
Thank you. Hannah? You're muted.
Yes. I just wanted to say thank you for talking to us today. I think that for me, the cooking part, the fact that they can cook for us, that's really cool. And I really understood the difference between automation and innovation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, thank you so much, Neil. It's a wonderful session. There's so many concepts, and where they need to make the right choices. You've given a lot of direction in a very simplistic manner. So much appreciated. I'm sure they'll benefit from listening to your session and seeing it again, because we'll be uploading it back for those who missed it and would like to watch it and understand it, or those who watched it but want to revisit it to understand a few more things in detail, because it was a lot of information. So thank you so much for this once again.
No, my pleasure. I'm glad to help. And I just want to reiterate that all of you really do have the power. You honestly have the power to shape the future. This is just, AI, like all technology, is a tool. So it's all about how you choose to wield it. You guys are going to be the ones that are really making those big decisions. And so I have faith in you guys, and I actually can't wait to see what you guys come up with. The world's going to be different in 10 years. I can't wait for the innovations you guys come up with.
Yes, maybe we can have a session then on how things shaped up from your guidance.
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.